Vaizey, let me come to you first. Are our expectations too high? Are we wrong to expect some kind of breakthrough on major issues at this stage?
Yes, I think our expectations are far too high, and I think that's the real problem I've had with the whole kind of approach to Brexit. You know, the country's voted to leave the European Union, and we're going to leave the European Union, but then suddenly, you know, the interpretation of what that means seems to be held by a sort of particular small cabal of people who say it's all got to happen by March 2019, there can't be any transition, and anything with an E in it, anything with Europe in it, cannot possibly have a jurisdictional role. You take the ECJ, it's going to be a tribunal, an independent tribunal that will adjudicate on matters of law where we have a continuing relationship with the European Union, which we will have both if we want to trade and also if we want to give European citizens rights, and we want British citizens to have rights in Europe. It can be tailored, it can have British judges on it. But what worries me is this ECJ red line. People seem to confuse it with the European Court of Human Rights, which always gets in the papers because it's making rulings on dangerous prisoners. It's got nothing to do with the European Union. No, the ECJ will simply be a tribunal.
Suzanne Evans, then we'll hear from David Lammy. It does look now that we're heading for quite a long transition period, does it not?
Of course. I mean, let me just take apart a couple of things that Ed actually said. You know, Ed, it's not us. It's not. Well, I'm going to take it apart. It's not. It's the EU that set this timetable. So it's no good you complaining about March the 29th.
What is Article 50?
We triggered Article 50. That's the 2-year negotiation period under EU law. So that's
which we agree
that's
to. We are members of the EU.
That's the only. Well, there are ways
hold on. Hold on. You had your say.
If she's going to take me apart, she better do it effectively.
I'll come back to you. We haven't even heard from David Lammy yet. So continue.
And you know, this idea that it's a minority of people that want a proper Brexit, a Brexit that's going to be good for people, is nonsense. It's what 52% of the people voted for, and I'm afraid you do the voters and your former constituents absolutely no good by trying to imply they didn't know what they were voting for.
This is the classic trick of
and as for this idea that it's going to be a protracted process, well, Andrew, of course, we have got ourselves sucked into this quagmire of the European Union very, very deep. It just shows how much sovereignty we've given away, and of course we voted
but do you
to get that back.
Now that there will, in addition to the 2-year period, which is now underway under Article 50, that on a number of these issues there will now have to be a potentially prolonged transitional period?
No, I think this is my worry. I think, you know, there is a deadline and we have to meet that deadline, because what we don't want is for this to go on and on and on forever. That's not in the country's best interest. You know, the sooner we can break free of the European Union, the sooner we can make our own trade deals, the sooner we can control our borders, the sooner we can be absolutely certain that we're living under British law.
Okay.
And that has got to be in the best interest of the
David
country.
Lammy, do you think we're in for a prolonged transition deal, no matter what is agreed under the Article 50 process?
If we don't get a transition deal, there's a terrible cliff edge that will ruin our economy and our jobs.
Cliff edge is a myth.
Of course there's a cliff edge.
Myth.
Without transition, without a soft landing, particularly for British industry and business, and that's what they want, there is a cliff edge, and a lot of people in Britain will suffer.
So when you talk about a soft transition, what you mean is joining EFTA, joining the EEA. That is not in Britain's best interest. All the things that I've just said, control of borders, control of immigration, taking back control, sovereignty of Parliament, that's not going to be possible if we stay in the single market.
Well, some of this
the
depends on whether you put that control, that fantasy control, above the economy.
What do you mean? I know the Labour Party thinks it was promised umpteen times to control immigration, and it's turned out to be a fantasy.
I'm in disagreement with my own front bench on these issues. But I'm not quite sure what you mean about fantasy control. But what I'm saying is it's a very peculiar thing to put immigration above economy, and without transition, we're going to crash the economy.
There's no either or.
No, Ed Vaizey, people like Suzanne Evans and the people in your own party are suspicious of a long transition period because they think people like you will then use that transition period to be effectively endless, and that we don't leave.
Exactly. And Suzanne's confirmed it. It's a completely ideological approach to Brexit. It's completely balmy. It takes no account of people's lives, their jobs, British businesses. We've said, you know, I'm a Remainer, but we accept the result, that there should be a transition period, and we could be part of the EEA, and sensible Brexiteers are now coming to that view, that we need a transition period. But you've got the Suzannes of this world who take an entirely ideological approach and don't give a monkey's about people's jobs.
Just shows quite your
extraordinary
arrogance. You're arrogant.
Why is it arrogant to want to protect people's jobs? Why is it arrogant to want to protect British
Again, you've had your say.
Go on.
You will now, and look, it's two of you against one, so I'd like to show some respect and fairness here.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Well, you don't think we should have fairness on,
I
on the
don't think
programme?
you showed me fairness earlier, Andrew, but that
Well,
dispute
why
will
don't
continue.
why don't we show Suzanne Evans some fairness,
Absolutely.
at least to have her say?
thank you. Thank
Right.
you.
But it does seem, let me try and put the point of substance to you, that so much has still to be decided that there will inevitably be loose ends that will require some kind of transition period now. Do you deny that?
No, I mean, the analogy that's often been given is that of a divorce, isn't it? Now, in some ways, it's a bad analogy, but in other ways, if you're divorcing, you've got children, there are things, once that decree nisi is absolute is declared, there are inevitably consequences that go on beyond that. But we have always said on the Brexit side that we want to continue a good working relationship with the European Union. And I think the point is that we need to do this in a spirit of harmony, a spirit of communication, and a spirit of what is best for our country. And let's be clear here, us leaving the European Union and getting a good trade deal in particular is going to be a benefit to the European Union too. And we have to be like responsible parents, and we have to discuss sensibly and look at what's in both our best interests. And the fact is, if you look at this logically, it's a sensible Brexiteer. I really don't like the fact you're saying some of us are sensible and some of us aren't, according to whether we agree with you or not.
The point.
We just need. There is a potential for this to be in both our best interests, and I think that's the sort of deal that we should be heading for. And I hope that's what's going to come out of the press conference today.
What would be left unresolved in a transition period, and how long would it be?
Well, I mean, my sort of overview is that we should be members of the EEA for a transitional period. But I want to emphasise it as a transitional.
That's you
transitional
EEA,
time.
but people don't know
limited,
these acronyms.
It's
the European. I'm just trying to help you by explaining what the EEA is. Would you just tell our viewers what that is and why that would be a transition?
Well, I think
period?
the European Economic Area being able to stay part of the customs union and the single market for a transitional period in order to trade. But there is no doubt at all that it would be time limited and we would come out. What I want to avoid most of all is a cliff edge that takes us out of the European Union completely in March 2029. I just don't see how
long
we
would
could
it
meet
be,
that.
do you think?
Well, I've suggested 5 years.
Yeah. So we remain in the single market and
while we
in
work
the
out
customs union.
the free trade deal that Suzanne
you,
wants and I want.
You don't think a free trade deal could be done by March of 2019?
I would be staggered, but if I'm proved wrong, I'm proved wrong. But I would be.
Hold on. David Lammy, is that your position too? Would you like to see a transition in which we remained in the single market and in the customs union?
I think a transition is essential because I absolutely disagree with Suzanne. I see no way on the timetable in which we can negotiate a free trade deal with Europe and negotiate our exit. There are too many big things to get through, and you've seen just in this initial week the huge disputes over the cost of the bill and the huge dispute over what will happen to EU residents. So the idea that we can move on to trade is just impossible, and any lawyer will tell you who's negotiated on trade, it's impossible. So for that reason alone, there has to be transition.
Well, I think you're being very pessimistic.
What makes you think? I mean, of course, we're in unique circumstances. Most free trade deals are negotiated from scratch to open things up. This would be, in a sense, a free trade deal, which inevitably would be less free than the current arrangement. Does that change things in your view?
I think we've already seen what the benefits to both us and to the European Union are of a free trade deal, because that's effectively what we have at the moment. It shouldn't be too difficult beyond the responsible adults to be able to negotiate something very similar. And I think, with respect to you, both of you, just start to be a bit more positive. I think there's a part of you that thinks that perhaps you want Britain to fail on this.
No, that's rubbish.
We must succeed. And
I know
we
I'm
will
not allowed
succeed.
to interrupt or whatever, but. That really is incredibly offensive.
No, I think
the idea that we want Britain to fail is ludicrous. We want to secure
let's be a little bit
British
more
jobs.
Can we agree on that?
I'm extremely positive, and I'm putting forward a positive solution to Brexit that will save British jobs and businesses.
It has been put forward and it's been debated.